May I request all our panelists and speakers to turn on their video for our official photo op? May we call on Secretary Dar to join us? Okay, so we will have our official photo op by Ms. Catherine Lee. So please look at your camera for about 5 seconds.
Okay po, ready? 1, 2, 3, smile. Dr. Henry, can you please open your camera? Okay, one more, ready? Smile, 1, 2, 3. Secretary Dar, can you please look at the camera for the photo op? One more, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Thank you very much. We will now be playing the Philippine National Anthem.
Bayang magiliw, perlas na silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pa sisiil. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw, may dilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kisap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagdiningning, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidilin. Lupa ng araw na buwan, ating pagsinta, buhay ay langit sa piling mo. Ang ligaya dapat ay mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
A pleasant good morning to everyone. We are in the webinar entitled Agriculture Innovations, Embracing the Impacts of Change in Agriculture and Food Security. This webinar is part of the week-long celebration of the 112th founding anniversary of the College of Agriculture and Food Science. We would like to thank the team of Professor Ryan Tayobong and the landscape team of the iCrops for our very creative and innovative backdrop over here. So before we start with our program proper, let me remind you of some of our house rules. First, the webinar can only accommodate maximum of 500 participants in Zoom, but we still have, I think, enough slots. You may also tune in to the CAF's YouTube channel and Facebook page because we are streaming live. While tuning in, please like and subscribe or follow our social media accounts, okay, of the College of Agriculture and Food Science UPLB to receive notifications on our future webinars. Second, for our participants or attendees right now, do not attempt to turn on your microphone and video. They were automatically disabled by our webinar admin to avoid distracting our speakers and the program. Third, please type in your questions, comments, and thoughts about the presentation in the Q&A box found at the center bottom of your screen for those who are here in Zoom anytime during the webinar. If your question comment is the same as what has been posted already, just click the like or thumbs up button to move it up to the priority list. For those who are watching us via YouTube channel and Facebook page of the College of Agriculture and Food Science, you may type in your questions, comments in the comment sections of YouTube and Facebook. Lastly, the certificate of attendance will be issued to each one of you upon completion of the evaluation form. The link will be posted before the event ends. Evaluation form will be available on a limited period only. Okay, so again, a pleasant morning to all of you. I am Dr. Veneranda A. Magpantay of the Institute of Animal Science, College of Agriculture and Food Science, UPLB, and I am your host this morning. So we are already in the third month of 2021. It's almost a year since COVID-19 pandemic started and the nationwide lockdown happened. A lot has changed over the year, the way we produce, purchase and consume our food changed dramatically over the year. However, the experience we had with the pandemic also opened a lot of opportunities for us. We are learning how to adapt and innovate. For one, gathering prominent people and inviting renowned speakers from abroad used to be very taxing and very costly, right? But now we are doing it at a very minimal cost. So who says innovation is costly? Personally, I am excited to hear the messages of our guests and the presentation of our speaker this morning on embracing the impacts of change through innovation in agriculture. So to formally start our program, may I call on Dr. Elpidio M. Agbisit Jr., the Dean of the College of Agriculture and Food Science, UPLB, to deliver his welcome remarks.
I thank you, Dr. Magpantay. Do you hear me properly? Okay ba ang sounds ko?
Yes, sir.
To, of course, Dr. Robert Henry, Professor of Innovation in Agriculture at the University of Queensland, Australia. To Dr. William D. Dar, Department of Agriculture Secretary. To the UPLB Chancellor, Jose V. Camacho Jr. To Dr. Glenn B. Gregorio, Shirka Director. To all the men and women of the College of Agriculture and Food Science, to the guests and viewers who are here with us today in Zoom, YouTube, and Facebook, a pleasant and enlightening morning to all. First, I would like to greet my College of Agriculture and Food Science family. Happy 112th founding anniversary. 112 years after, we are still standing strong, the first true-born college of the University of the Philippines system, still in the front lines, pandemic or not, contributing to nation building. To the men and women of the college, let me take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for all your efforts to achieve our mutual goal. We cannot achieve all our success if not for you. Our 112 years can definitely attributed to all you Aggies. Second, to Secretary William D. Dar, thank you for lending us some of your busy time. Your love for your alma mater is truly appreciated, especially the support you continuously give us. Rest assured, we will always be with you, supporting your programs for our country. Third, to Dr. Robert Henry, we are sincerely thankful for accepting our invite to talk to talk in our webinar. For sure, we will learn a lot from your experience and thoughts of innovations in agriculture and food supply in response to the latest pandemic. We strongly believe that your vast knowledge and experience as a professor of innovation in agriculture will enlighten us in updating our roadmap to embrace the challenges that the food and agriculture are facing now. Lastly, I would like to enjoin everyone to attend our week-long virtual activities. Given the situation, we still want to share with you our birthday celebration. Just tune in our YouTube channel, CAFS UP Los Baños, for other activities. My dear Aggies, thank you again for the love and support to our college. Please always keep in mind that we are one college, one goal toward sustainable food systems. Hashtag CAFS at 112 and more. Thank you. May we stay healthy, safe, and productive at all times. And God bless us all. Mambanda?
Thank you, Dean Agbisit, for your message and for doing a lot of great things no, for the college. Now, let us have the message of the Chancellor of the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, Dr. Jose V. Camacho Jr.
To the Secretary of the Department of Agriculture, the Honorable William Dar, to the Director of the Southeast Asian Regional Center for Graduate Studies and Research in Agriculture, or CIRCA, Dr. Glenn Gregorio, to our guest speaker, Dr. Robert Henry, Professor of Innovation in Agriculture, to the faculty members, reps, administrative staff, students, and alumni of College of Agriculture and Food Science, and to everyone joining us today, good morning. Happy 112th anniversary to the College of Agriculture and Food Science. For more than a century, the College of Agriculture, now the College of Agriculture and Food Science, or CAFS, has been conducting important and groundbreaking research activities that complement our country's development goals, while providing the much needed support to Filipino farmers, among many other sectors. In as many years, the college has been home to leading scientists, researchers, extension workers, and educators. Their work has been instrumental in shaping agricultural policy in our country. Truly, CAFS is a source of pride and inspiration for the UPLB community. In celebration of its 112th anniversary, CAFS has chosen to put spotlight on the necessity of agricultural innovation. This year's theme, Agricultural Innovations, Embracing Impacts of Change in Agriculture and Food Security, is a particularly timely one. In recent years, there has been an increased liveliness in the development of agricultural technologies and innovations made possible by the advancement in artificial intelligence, automation, the Internet of Things, and gene editing, to name a few. While such is in itself good and exciting, it is important to consider how these technologies and innovations can concretely benefit farming communities. Now, more than ever, considering the difficulties brought about by COVID-19 pandemic and climate change to the livelihood of the millions of farmers, agricultural workers, and rural families in our country, it is necessary to make agricultural research and technological advancement work for the communities we serve. This means supporting farming communities so that they develop the practical skills to use the agricultural technologies efficiently and creatively. CAFS has taken the lead in this endeavor through its various research, extension, and public service programs. These activities have encouraged the development of farming cultures that integrate communities' practical knowledge and lived experience with science-based approaches. UPLB reiterates its commitment to support CAFS so that it can continue to do its work of helping build a resilient and sustainable Philippine agriculture. Once again, on behalf of the UPLB community, I extend my congratulations to the College of Agriculture and Food Science. Have a meaningful anniversary. May honor and excellence continue to inspire you to better serve our fellow Filipinos in the years to come. May we show our compassion as we continue to collaborate towards a better future. Stay safe, everyone. Maraming salamat at mabuhay tayong lahat.
Thank you, Chancellor Camacho, for always supporting and recognizing the programs and achievements of the College of Agriculture and Food Science. This morning, we are grateful, indeed grateful, for a very rare opportunity to be joined by the current highest leader of the Philippine agriculture. So if you are following DA social media platforms or accounts, you would know how busy he is right now, but he is with us this morning. May I call on the Secretary of the Department of Agriculture, Dr. William D. Dar, to give us his inspirational message.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Let me greet the good Chancellor of UPLB, Dr. Dong Camacho Jr., the Dean of the College of Agriculture and Food Sciences, Dr. Elpidio Agbisit Jr., the keynote speaker from Australia, Professor Robert Henry, Dr. Glenn Gregorio of Circa, other officials of the university, friends, ladies, and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. Thank you to the UPLB College of Agriculture and Food Science for inviting the Department of Agriculture here and allowing us to share how we have been laying the foundations for a modern and industrializing agri-fishery sector. As I am addressing a university that is esteemed for promoting science-based farming approaches and solutions, let me highlight first in my talk the critical work of collaborating with higher education institutions in our technology and innovation perspectives. As universities and colleges are a country's wellsprings for knowledge, technology, and innovation, we at the DA tap those excelling in the field of agricultural research to pursue research for development instead of research and development. And I emphasize on this change in the term that we at the Department of Agriculture are now adopting to capture the need for a new thinking that research pursuits must not end in publications and instead must deliver actual innovative outputs that can truly be utilized, integrated in the value chain, and enhance agri-productivity and management efficiencies. So this is one major challenge to the College of Agriculture and Food Science. Bring those technologies out in the field in a massive way, upscale it, for these technologies to be properly considered by the farming and the fishing sector. The University of the Philippines at Los Baños, being an active R4D agent in the field of agriculture and rural development, is of course one of the university partners that we work closely with. And we are very grateful for your unwavering commitment. Likewise, at the Department of Agriculture, several R4D projects by our various offices and bureaus managed to progress in clinical trials, with some even in commercialization stage, despite a tumultuous 2020 when we had to address various challenges all at once, from a volcanic eruption and a string of typhoons to the African swine fever and to the COVID-19 pandemic, all while observing new normal rules and also prioritizing the health and safety needs of our staff. Our technological movement is also being pushed with inclusivity in mind. By sending out caravans to various provinces and opening technology demonstration farms and farm schools to disseminate information about modern farming, we ensure that our assistance benefits communities and indigenous peoples in remote areas. Now, if we have to look at globally, now is the time for global solidarity and support, especially with the most vulnerable in our societies, particularly in the emerging and developing world. Only together can we overcome the intertwined health and social and economic impacts of the pandemic and prevent its escalation into a protracted humanitarian and food security catastrophe with the potential loss of already achieved development gains. There is a new world today, a new normal, and even global trading arrangements are disrupted to some extent. There is increasing food prices all over the world, and this compels us to really advocate for a massive plant program so that every Filipino is engaged in its food production requirement. So that is again a very important message to UPLB, much more the College of Agriculture and Food Science. Get out there, have more communities to work with, to advocate a higher level of food production by having more of these technologies and innovations that you have been generating all these years. Get out there so that every Filipino will benefit from, UPLB, which is this university of every Filipino. So it is such a tall order, but this is the call of the hour for UPLB really to come, respond to what is needed under this new world order, a new normal. And while fighting COVID-19 pandemic, we must see to it that we must have enough food. And this is the time for technologies, innovations that must have to be scaled up and scaled up really in a big way. So at this point, let me share with you the ways with which we can transform Philippine agriculture today and in the future. This is the 1DA agenda with the following key strategies that we are institutionalizing this year. And I hope the University of the Philippines at Los Baños, much more the College of Agriculture and Food Science, be an active partner in pursuing all these key strategies that we have outlined. And, transforming Philippine agriculture under a new normal is such a very challenging position or a challenging pursuit, but let's dream and put this dream into action. And we need universities, we need higher educational institutions to make it possible for the countryside to get to the level of having to really consider increased food production by way of improving productivity of the various commodity industries that we have. So consolidation is such a key strategy to consider Bayanihan agri-clusters. This is the farm clustering efforts, so that most of the interventions will go through these clusters. Not anymore that we do individual extension to farmers. Collective action is necessary. The pursuit of developing cooperatives would be key. And again, the university will have to appreciate what are the lessons learned in terms of cooperatives' performance in the past. What are the things we need to do today so that those past mistakes in terms of the engagement of these cooperatives in the countryside will not be repeated once more. So ang dami pong mga kailangan po natin na punuan. At ang College of Agriculture and Food Science will be crucial, and most of the other higher educational institutions, to really make it possible now that cooperatives development will be a key approach to making the farmers more productive and more competitive. We are also pursuing now a province-led agriculture fisheries extension system. How cannot the university come forward and be a part in mentoring the provinces that are now in the pilot stage? We have one pilot province per region today. So we have 16 more or less pilot provinces in the country where a decentralized extension system is now being pursued. The money, the budget that we have at the National Department of Agriculture will be leveraged with the resources that the local government units have. So again, we are highlighting the fact that at various levels, every province, it is the governor or the local chief executive that is the food security czar. Open than, more open than not, ang palagi nabibigyan ng pansin o criticism ay ang DA. And these extension systems have been devolved all this time. It is now necessary for all of us to work together to make it possible that these local chief executives and LGUs must now work, and they are going to lead this time around. So there are many other approaches under consolidation. Diversification is necessary. From a rice-centric agriculture, we need now to diversify Philippine agriculture. And credit support will always be necessary because most of the farmers of today are indebted to the traders, to the wholesalers. We have to cut that now. And there are plenty of credit windows that now can be tapped, very affordable rates, lower than 5% even. And it is now necessary to really reinvigorate the countryside by way of really enhancing their capacities so that even the younger generation will now come in to help in enhancing, implementing these various key strategies. Modernization is second. It is always a need, and that's where technology and innovation, which includes digital agriculture, would be necessary. I have always believed that the engine of growth today is based on technology and innovation. That will always be so in the future. Those who are investing in precision agriculture, in digital agriculture, in resilient agriculture will be the leaders in agriculture in the world. And again, this is one big challenge the University of the Philippines at Los Baños can pursue in terms of elevating the game by concentrating or so focusing your research efforts on the future agriculture that we would like to have a generation from now. So trailblazing innovation system, trailblazing by way of painting, designing today the kind of Philippine agriculture that we must have to have a generation from now. That's the challenge for the College of Agriculture and Food Science. So down the line, industrialization is key. We need to enhance agribusiness approaches. We need to use agribusiness as a way to encourage the younger generations, even the farmers. As collective, they should be pursuing agribusiness approaches because we believe that if these cooperatives are strong, they can lead in value chain pursuit, not only in production, but also in value adding and down the line to marketing. That's what we would like to achieve. And higher educational institutions will be necessary. We need more. If we go down the line, professionalization is one key strategy. And again, it's here where higher educational institutions will be key to producing more agribusiness managers in the process. So we need to really put up an agriculture career system in the Department of Agriculture. We need to enhance our education and training, but what is needed by the hour today and in the future is even a certificate for agribusiness management, good for one semester, or a diploma for agribusiness management, good for 1 year. And I hope the College of Agriculture and Food Science will now broaden its mindset by enhancing the development of human capital along the lines of these various key strategies so that we can accelerate the transformation of Philippine agriculture. So again, I wish to congratulate the leaders of UPLB, the leaders of the College of Agriculture and Food Science. Let me greet you once more on your 112th Foundation Day. Marami pong salamat.
Maraming salamat po, Secretary Dar, for inspiring us to work more, not just for the professionalization and modernization of agriculture, but also consolidation and industrialization. Dean Pitts was nodding his head a while ago. So may I say that UPLB and the College of Agriculture and Food Science are aligning its program with the department by conducting relevant researches for development, providing science-based scaled-up technologies and products for the agriculture sector, and providing the sector with well-trained human resources. So thank you, Secretary Dar, for your time this morning. The college would like to give you a certificate of appreciation. Let me read the citation. The College of Agriculture and Food Science, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, College Laguna, Philippines, presents this certificate of appreciation to Dr. William D. Dar for giving us an inspirational message during the 112th Foundation Day celebration of the College of Agriculture and Food Science held on March 3, 2021, given this third day of March 2021 at the CAFS, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, Laguna. Signed, Dr. Elpidio M. Agbisic Jr., Dean, and Dr. Pompey C. Santa Cruz, the chair of the webinar committee. Again, thank you very much, Secretary Dar. God bless you more.
Maraming salamat po. God bless us all.
Okay, let us move on to the next part of our program. To introduce our keynote speaker, may I call on the Director of the Southeast Asian Regional Center for Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture, or CIRCA, the advocate of the agriculture innovation in the Philippines himself, Dr. Glenn B. Gregorio.
Thank you and good morning. One of the main events as we celebrate the UPLB 112 Foundation Day is this grand webinar on agricultural innovations. This is the thrust now of the Department of Agriculture, as we hear from Secretary Dar, and of course from UPLB, and of course from the College of Agriculture and Food Science, which I'm also a faculty. We are lucky to have Dr. Robert Henry as our keynote speaker. Dr. Robert Henry was Foundation Director of the Queensland Alliance for Agriculture and Food Innovation. I call it CAFI. CAFI mission, actually, if you go to the website, the CAFI mission is a quality, research quality plus industry impact, and that's it. That's the mission of QAAFI, or the Queensland Alliance for Agriculture and Food Innovation. And this is not, just to give you the current director now is of the QAAFI is very familiar to us. The former Director General of the International Rice Research Institute, Dr. Matthew Morel, and it happens to be my boss before. And for Dr. Henry, before he was being a founding director, Dr. Robert Henry was director of Center for Plant Conservation Genetics at South Cross University, also the research director of the Grain Food Cooperative Research Center, and research program leader in the Queensland Agricultural Biotechnology Center. Professor Henry's specialization is the study of agricultural crops using molecular tools, which is also very near my heart because I'm a plant geneticist and a plant breeder. He is particularly interested in plants of economic and social importance and has led the research into genome sequencing to capture novel genetic resources for diversification of food crops to deliver improved food products. So in short, Robert conducts research on development of new products from plants. So that's innovation. Professor Henry is a graduate of University of Queensland for his bachelor's degree of science in biochemistry from Macquarie University for his Master of Science in Biological Science, and from La Trobe University for his PhD in Biochemistry. Very prestigious course and universities. In 2001, Professor Henry was awarded the highest doctorate, Doctor of Science, Innovation in Agriculture by the University of Queensland for his work on analysis of variation in plants. Just to give you an information, Dr. Robert Henry has at least 426 scientific articles. 426 scientific articles, 2 books, 68 book chapters with H index of 81, with more than 27,000 citations. Extraordinary writer, a very extraordinary writer himself. We can hear from him how he has translated this publication to practical innovations. Professor Robert Henry will now share his experience on agriculture innovations, embracing impact on climate, on change in agriculture and food security. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Professor of Innovation in Agriculture, Dr. Robert Henry.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by just thanking the organisers of this event for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. And I'll share my screen if I can to begin to talk about these big topics that we all need to address at the moment. And I'm going to talk broadly about innovation in agriculture and give you some of my perceptions of that, but start with a little bit about the current situation, and that's really how we're responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. This has really been something that's brought everyone's attention to the importance of food at the world level. It's made agricultural research, I think, something that's given increased importance because people in this situation have come to realize just how important it is to be able to obtain their food. And I've been looking at trying to predict what some of these impacts have been, and some of the short-term impacts have been not so much on food supply, because the world has continued, despite the pandemic, to produce food and has had some reasonably good production environments. But the economic impact of the pandemic has been such that many people cannot afford food. And so we're seeing a great growth in people that are short of food, largely because the food we're producing isn't getting to them for various reasons. There's some disruption to supply and distribution, but a significant challenge is the economic challenge of those people in being able to afford to buy food in the current situation. And it remains to be seen how the pandemic develops. But this has been a really strong response. I've been interested to understand how people have reacted, particularly in interpreting what we should be doing in innovation. what are the responses of the agricultural research community to the pandemic? And clearly there's a number of messages. I think there's a greater emphasis on self-sufficiency everywhere in the world. Every country has become more aware of the need to produce their own food because of the risks associated with long supply chains. Great interest in greater automation of production, and this is at every level, because we don't want our food supply dependent on people that might get sick. I think this pandemic will shape our thinking and planning about the risks of future pandemics, which may, of course, be even worse than the current one. So I think this is going to be an enduring impact on the way people look at innovation in the food system. Automation of processing. Here in Australia, we've had significant problems with meat processing because of the facilities requiring people to be close together in confined spaces. We see great interest in automating those processes to make them less dependent on people in those situations, and focus on the security of the supply chain, particularly, I think, in having maybe a shorter supply chain. People are nervous about food coming through long supply chains with lots of players. People are really enthusiastic about developing food systems that give them that security of supply. But overall, I think the big message, take-home message from the COVID pandemic is that we need to focus even more on the things we're already doing. We need to innovate in all the ways that we have been, but with greater urgency. We need more sustainable food production, and we need to get to that point more quickly. And so much of what I have to say in the remainder of this talk is really about what I see as the needs for innovation in agriculture, with the emphasis that the pandemic situation really just makes this all that much more urgent. So in thinking about the future of agriculture, I always think that there are a number of sort of mega trends or factors that really are shaping the way we should be thinking about what agriculture is going to be like in the future and the innovation we need to get there. And first of all, it needs to be adapted to climate change. This is really an overarching expectation that we need to adapt to be able to produce food sustainably in future and altered climates, and maybe more variable climates. And of course, we need to continue to address consumer demands, but we need to be understanding what the food consumers of the future will be demanding, so that we, in our agricultural innovation, develop the products that those future food consumers are going to want to pay for and are going to want to consume. And the other inevitable thing is that agriculture is going to be impacted by new technologies. These technologies, of course, impact everything in society, and they don't necessarily come from agriculture, but they really can sometimes be quite profound in the way they change everything. So we have to accept that new technologies will and are changing everything in agriculture. And just first of all, to talk about climate change, I've been involved with a series of meetings that we've been having in Europe about agriculture and climate change. And I think the interesting point for me, the trend, is that this, like everything else, this year's meeting's postponed till next year because of the COVID situation. But the big trend is that there's a lot more interest in how agriculture can mitigate climate change, not just adapt. For a long time in these meetings, we were talking about how we can change agriculture to cope with climate change. There's much more positive engagement now in what we can do in agriculture to help to actually mitigate climate change. And I think for agricultural researchers, that's a much more exciting phase in this development. And I suppose the vision that I'd like to share is one in which we think about agriculture replacing fossil fuels in the carbon cycle. And this is really the way we're going to produce the carbon-based products of the future. We can use a range of technologies to replace fossil fuels for fuel uses, for energy uses, but for making plastics and chemicals and all of the other things we make from oil, we do need to use carbon. And agriculture will be the feedstock that supplies this replacement. So there's an involvement of agriculture in an environmental sense, but also in a product development sense to play a really important role in mitigating climate change. And in terms of the response to climate change, I also like to think of a couple of different ways that I see this being dealt with. One is we can just think about adapting agriculture to climate change. Just keep producing the things we're producing now, but work on how we can cope with that change. But there are other strategies that are playing out as well. And the second of those is to move agriculture. That's to move it to a new environment. So we're seeing crop production move to higher altitudes in some places where that's possible. In Australia and North America, we're seeing agriculture moving further away from the equator. So the same crops will be produced at different latitudes in response to a moving of the temperature zones. And we can see that happening already in a very substantial way. This is not something that is without the need for substantial innovation, though, because moving a crop to an area that has the climate, the temperature that we had before, may move it into an area where the soils are not suitable any longer for that crop. So there needs to be quite a lot of innovation in adopting this strategy of relocating agriculture to areas that still have favourable climates. But another strategy that really is emerging, and this is, I think, where a lot of investment and high technology will play out, and that is in protecting agriculture from the environment. By accepting that we can't move it away, we can't just adapt it, we actually have to physically protect our crops. And that takes us into this area of precision agriculture and protected cropping. And I'd like to take you through these sort of 4 different levels, if you like, of protected cropping that are depicted here. And this is driven to happen much faster because of climate change. We can grow the crops in the field, but even in tropical environments, we're seeing people now starting to protect crops, building plastic tunnels or building windbreaks. So at that first level of small level of protection, we can intensify production a little bit and we can slightly modify the environment. At the next step, we maybe take production into a completely enclosed structure like a glasshouse, but we're still using natural light. And that allows another level of intensification of production. But we are seeing a lot of investment in going all the way to indoor farming or vertical farming. And this requires that you have an energy supply to provide the light, for example, for very intensive production. Now, the extent to which we move agricultural production down this pathway to a more protected environment depends, of course, on the value of the product. We need very high value products to justify the capital investment in these structures. But while these things were happening only in the temperate world, protecting crops largely from the cold, we're now seeing, of course, the potential that this might play out on a larger scale in the tropics, protecting crops from highly variable environments. So I do see a great trend in this direction. As we develop the technology to do this cost efficiently, what we need is very high production levels to justify this and high value products. But in many cases, we're finding they do exist. And the challenge that I face as a plant geneticist is that we need very different varieties of crops, even if of the same species, if we're looking at these very different production futures. This is certainly the long-term future, if not the short-term future of much of the agriculture in the world. Then to turn to the market drivers for innovation in agriculture. We've for long had the price of the food. People will only buy food if it tastes the way they like and is convenient. They don't want something that takes too long to cook or whatever. They've been with us for a long time. But what we're now seeing, particularly in some societies, is the growth of a range of other factors that are greatly influencing the choice of food from consumers. First of those has probably been the perceptions of health. People want to eat food that's healthy, that they think will lead to a long and healthy life. They're also increasingly concerned about their environmental footprint. And so they want to consume food and they prefer to buy food that is sustainably produced. This is a challenge, of course, to communicate, but this is a growing area of consumer interest. And the third is the social impact of their choice of food. People want to understand that their food's being produced in an ethical way, without exploitation of anyone in the value chain. And so these new consumer desires are things that in agricultural innovation we really do need to pay attention to. We need to produce food at the right price that is attractive in taste, that is convenient, that will give consumers confidence that it's healthy to eat, that it was produced sustainably, and that it was produced ethically. And all of this adds to the complexity of the future agenda. And the one example that I've been engaged with and may be familiar to you is the potential to try and produce rices that may be more slowly digested and may have be considered to have health benefits. The challenge here, of course, is that we can find such rices, but we need to find such rices that are attractive to consumers, that can preserve the traditional tastes and textures of the rice while adding these perceived and real health attributes. I think the science is getting to the point where we are going to start to see some of these products reaching the market, and this will be potentially an increasing trend. Now, turning to technologies, I see always three technology areas that in our work here are having a big impact. Biotechnology, in the broadest sense, is a real driver of innovation. Nanotechnology, and nanotechnology is finding lots of applications in agriculture. And overarching everything, of course, is information technology. The use of the Internet of Things, all of the different dimensions of innovation in this space, from machine learning to every other type of application. These really are driving a whole lot of change in agriculture, and we need to understand and work with it. The other perspective that I have, and I've worked with a large number of agricultural industries at the sort of individual level, and considered where the greatest innovation potential is to improve the efficiency, sustainability, and profitability of those industries. And there's really two components to the way we can innovate. We can innovate in terms of the organism, the genetics, the plant or animal that we're producing, or we can innovate in the way we manage its production and the inputs that we have to that management. And what I see in many industries is that they become locked into one or the other of these in an unbalanced way. And the broader analysis of many systems to me has suggested that these two different elements of innovation generally contribute about equally in the long term to the gains in productivity that we've been achieving in agriculture. And so the best prospect for the future is that we continue to invest in a balanced or about equivalent way in these two broad areas of innovation, if we're to maximize the rate of progress into the future. When I looked at industries that have just focused on breeding and genetics, or industries that just focus on management, there really is an opportunity to redress that balance and to make overall more rapid progress in innovation. So I was just going to spend a little bit of time talking about innovations largely in plant genetics, my area. I thought it's better to talk about an area that I'm most familiar with. And I've been involved in editing and writing books in this area for a long time, and these are just some examples. And I really have reached the point where I've stopped writing books because it takes too long. The innovations are happening at such a pace that it's really not possible to write a book about any of these topics and have it published before it's largely out of date. The technology continues to move forward very quickly. And if we look at DNA sequencing. This is a commonly shown slide that shows that the price of sequencing has collapsed, and that the potential to move forward more rapidly continues to develop. And I have to say, in the last 12 months, this has not slowed down. The rate at which these technologies are improving is, if anything, accelerating. And coming along with that, we need, if we're going to adopt these sort of technologies, to really have the capacity to work with information technology on a large scale. And really, a lot of plant genetics and plant improvement, for example, has moved away from the laboratory. It's really done in silico today. A large part of the effort is in managing and analyzing that huge amount of data that we collect at the research level. And this is from a paper that I've just put online, and bioRxiv, just celebrating some of the real improvements in the last year in genetics that have really moved us ahead almost an order of magnitude in our capacity to work with the genetics of major agricultural species. And I see the potential for us to apply this much more widely to capturing much of the biodiversity that agriculture hasn't utilised. We do have many organisms that we use as sources of food, but there are many more that have potential for such use or have attributes that we can capture in agricultural species. And so I just give you just a few examples of innovation in genetics that I think are having a big impact. First of all, of course, I'll come back to rice, which is something that's of real global importance. I just produced this slide to show a connection between the area where you are in the Philippines and Northern Australia, where we've shown that the wild rices have similar genetic origin. So this is a map of some of the different groups of wild rices that we see grown across the natural distribution from Northern Australia up to Northern China. And we do see that there are some very distinct groups, some of which have not been utilised at all in rice improvement, and have a range of attributes that are of considerable value. So there's a whole new area to explore out there. Particularly, I think it's interesting that maybe it's birds or something that have shown the distributed rice between the Philippines and Australia to show the common genetics. But this is found also in some other plant species. I'll just say a little bit about coffee, because coffee is something that's very important in a number of cultures and important here in Australia. And this is an area where I've spoken to the media more than about any other topic, because it seems that in Australia people are not so concerned about climate change. But when Kew Gardens announced that climate change was threatening coffee supplies, suddenly a lot of people became interested. They're very passionate about coffee, and so people have understood that through these sorts of impacts, climate change might really impact on their lives. Great diversity of material here. What we've discovered is that through using genetic techniques, that the coffee from the bottom part of the bush is better quality than the coffee from the top half of the bush. And this is because of the subtle differences in the environment. So that the cooler environment in the lower part of the canopy produces beans that mature more slowly and have higher quality. These sorts of insights are going to help us to think about how we reinvent coffee for the climates of the future. We really have to do that, because most of the areas in which we produce coffee will be unsuitable for producing high quality coffee in the near future because of the projected changes in climate. So this is a good example of how we need to get ahead of climate change. In wheat, although it's not a species of probably great immediate interest to you, we've found that genetics has allowed us to innovate at 3 levels. And I think this illustrates how we need to move beyond the farm gate in innovation. We've been able to find genes in the photosynthetic processes that will improve the efficiency and yield of grain. But we've also recently discovered a small protein that's involved in releasing much more flour from the grain. So from every ton of wheat, we now can get, through genetic innovation, much more flour. We've also identified another small protein that determines the quality of the bread. So we can produce more bread from the flour. So here, by adding higher yields of grain to higher yields of flour per ton of grain and higher amounts of bread per ton of flour, an innovation that adds together to really move wheat to much higher levels of productivity. And this is the type of pre and post farm gate innovation that's required to be packaged to meet the challenges of the future. I'm really keen to see much more emphasis on the pulses, and I see that there are very many species that could be used in agriculture that have not yet been used. With modern technology, we could bring many more of these into production and diversify the range of protein sources coming from plants. I was keen also to mention the work we're doing on tree crops. In tree crops, what we see is a need for sustainable intensification of production. And we're now working with these 5 major crops, the avocado, mango, citrus, almond, and macadamia, that represent a large proportion of the value of tree production here in Australia. And what we're aiming to do is sustainably intensify by growing many more smaller trees closer together and having much greater production per unit area, producing more fruit and nuts and less trees, and doing so with less water, less inputs in terms of nutrients and so forth. And the macadamia is a good example of how we've really gone back to the wild, finding smaller trees so that we can now breed smaller stature into the trees so we can do much more intensive production. And this means we need to link up the basic science and application to deliver these, what we hope will be of the order of 10-fold increases in productivity for these tree crops. We're also working with jojoba, the desert plant that from America that in which we're finding very many drought resistance mechanisms and genes that we hope to be able to transfer into crops. And we've made some major breakthroughs in the last months in this space. This is very exciting to be able to think about taking some of these new drought adaptation attributes. I thought I'd mention also that agriculture needs to be more than just food, that the profitability of agriculture depends upon us innovating in non-food products. Here is where we're working on producing higher levels of these high-value tropamine alkaloids from plants to use in medicine. These can be very attractive products for farmers, giving very high returns and real innovation potential. I just wanted to say something about sugarcane. I know that's something that should be of interest. We're really trying to reinvent sugarcane for different purposes. The world price for sugar has been low for some time, and it's our projection that that's not going to change, that people are moving away from using sugar in their diets in the quantity that they did before because of considerations of health. And so we're now looking at reinventing a crop like sugarcane to produce other products. And for a long time, the focus has been on producing fuels. We can produce fuels for a wide range of vehicles from something like sugarcane. But increasingly, we're now seeing that technologies like electrification, the development of electric cars, mean that liquid fuels probably have a short-term future in transportation. And so we're now moving much more of the focus to how we use sugarcane to produce biomaterials, plastics, fabrics, building materials, things that replace oil, but not for transport fuel, because the market for transport fuel may become much more limited because of alternative energy technologies. And this, we need to be considering all of this in agricultural research. Gene editing was mentioned in the introductions this morning, and I see this as being something that will have a profound effect upon agriculture. We're likely to see very rapid introduction of new consumer products. We can edit the quality of the end product, the nutritional value, the color, the texture, the taste, and we will start to see these products coming to market relatively soon. We're investing in the capability here of being able to edit a wider range of species in useful ways to support agricultural innovation. The application of this will depend on consumer acceptance. Here in Australia, this technology now in some of its applications is not considered GM and is deregulated. So we expect to see widespread application. It's not the case everywhere. In Europe, for example, it seems likely that this technology will be less widely accepted. So we've now started a new project with the Carlsberg Foundation to look at using mutagenesis on a large scale to really do the same things we would have done with gene editing, but to do it with brute force of producing very large populations of mutants. Here we're going to produce hundreds of thousands of mutants of sorghum, so that we've got effectively every mutation that you might have produced by gene editing, and can do it in a more conventional way that will be acceptable to consumers. We really are trying to understand the relative future for this technology versus gene editing. We're also turning back to understanding what happens in nature. How do organisms adapt to variable environments in nature, and how can we use that knowledge to adapt agriculture? And we have a new Centre of Excellence for Plant Success that draws those parallels. What do plants do to adapt to climate change in nature? Can we use that knowledge in agriculture? It will provide really important clues. And then, in finishing, I think the other thing that we need to keep innovating is in our understanding and deployment of appropriate intellectual property environments in which to conduct research. I was involved in trying to understand how we can facilitate efficient and rapid innovation while respecting access and benefit sharing requirements of owners of biological material. And we need to reconcile this. And so I'll commend these recent articles, one in Nature Plants, on the challenges we face in working with historical material in collections in gene banks, and one that's just accepted today in Molecular Plant on the issues around sharing of genetic information, sharing of digital information, which is going to become a much bigger international issue that we all need to face and address and resolve in an equitable way. I've talked mainly about crop improvement and genetics, but I just wanted to mention that I see big technology changes in crop protection. The advent of nanotechnology, we can now spray nanoparticles coated with RNAi as an alternative to using insecticides or fungicides and leave no residue. A really major development that could completely displace the use of pesticides. And of course, vertical farming, that will change completely the issues around crop protection. I'll just finish by promoting a couple of local meetings. We're having an International Plant Molecular Biology meeting in Cairns next year. I will be hosting a meeting on diversification of agriculture, the Harlan Symposium, the fourth in this series, where we look at the domestication and use of plants and animals from the wild and their incorporation into agriculture to enrich agriculture, and that will now be late next year, in conjunction with the International Tropical Agriculture Conference, which will be again hosted here in Brisbane next year. And we'd be very keen to have all of you or any of you attend these meetings. I'll just end my talk by thanking the many funders and collaborators that we have in much of the work I described in my presentation, from many different countries, and really it is a global effort to see the innovation that's required for sustainable food production in the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Henry, for your very informative presentation. To moderate the open forum, may I call on Dr. Filma C. Calalo, a professor from the Agricultural Systems Institute of the College of Agriculture and Food Science, UPLB.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vanda. And good morning, Dr. Henry. Thank you very much again for that very informative talk. I come from the social science part of the College of Agriculture, and we take very much interest in agriculture innovations simply because we want to see how people behave, how people react, how people view agricultural innovations. My task this morning is to go over the questions that have been sent to us. So it could be through the Q&A, ladies and gentlemen. Some questions are from YouTube and some questions have been sent to my Facebook Messenger. So to start it off, I'd like to start with a question from our very own Dean, Dr. Pidsag Bisit. Our Dean asks, how can or what can the academy do to complement the key areas or programs of the Department of Agriculture as mentioned by our DA Secretary a while ago in the context of agriculture innovation? Dr. Henry?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think it is the responsibility of academics to attempt to engage with agencies such as departments of agriculture in delivering agricultural innovation. It's essential, really, if that innovation is going to impact on farmers. So we here, of course, in forming the alliance that I headed, the Queensland Alliance for Agriculture and Food Innovation, joined together the agricultural research capabilities of the university and the State Department of Agriculture, and brought all of the scientists from those two organisations into a single organisational unit that I then headed. And that allowed us to really integrate the efforts, that all of our work was designed not only to advance the scientific understanding, but to actually inform the application in agriculture. And so I think there's a great merit in looking at the whole program of the Department of Agriculture and of the university and where the common points are and how academics can partner with people working in government to deliver those innovations and really, in many cases, that's essential to it being effective in my view.
Thank you very much, Dr. Henry, for that. I think our Dean is now inspired to craft a proposal for our Department of Agriculture, given that context. Okay, another question, Dr. Henry. Where does biological or ecological diversity contributing to agricultural resiliency and sustainability comes into play as an innovative approach moving forward?
Yes, so I certainly have a strong view that biodiversity and conserving biodiversity is essential to conserving the biological systems on which our agriculture and food production is based. So it couldn't be more important in many ways for agriculture. It is a complex question because agricultural intensification has sometimes been misinterpreted as displacing biodiversity within the agricultural footprint. But quite often, I think the key to biodiversity conservation is innovations in agricultural productivity, sustainable agricultural productivity, because if we can produce the food we need on a smaller land footprint more efficiently, that actually allows more land to be protected in national parks and reserves. And so in many environments, it contributes significantly to conserving biodiversity. So it depends very much, if you look across the landscape, on just what stage of degradation has been reached through land clearing or agriculture. But in many situations, producing the food very intensely on a small area gives us a great opportunity to protect other areas and conserve that biological diversity. So it's a very complex question in terms of how you do this, but it's really essential that we do it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Henry. Another question. What will be the roles of insect microorganism relationship or insect pathology in relation to agriculture innovation in ensuring food security? This one came from YouTube.
I think we can only say that the integrated pest management is the way we have to approach control of pests, and that we need to use all and every one of the tools available to us. The use of microorganisms to control insects is an area that I think will prove to be quite powerful and useful, and will be something that is essential. We are also seeing an interest in, of course, cultivating insects as a source of food. And so the insects may be the pest that we need to control with microorganisms, but they may also be the thing we need to cultivate to produce food. And so, but there's a lot of interest in growing insects as food. So yes, understanding the science of insects and their diseases, really important. We've had big programs here on bacteria that, of course, will control mosquitoes for malarial control, but the same principles will apply to agricultural pests very much.
Okay, this one is a very common question among scientists and researchers. How would funding for innovations in biodiversity, biotechnology, and bioinformatics be more encouraging to donor agencies?
Yes, well, I think it is always a challenge to be able to convince those with the money to invest it in agricultural innovation. And I think we need to continue to try and explain the link, in some of those cases, the link between that research and the impact on agriculture is not always well understood, and we need to understand how to communicate that to those with making investments. I can see the potential for a lot more private investment in agricultural innovation. If we look around the world, many investors have realized, and I think the pandemic has helped, the central importance of food, and the fact that they could invest in many areas, but one that's got a secure future is agriculture, because in 50 years' time, we are all still going to be eating food, whatever else might change. And so that sort of argument does convince many investors to think about including more investments in agriculture in their portfolios. And what I'm hoping is that will see the availability of more of that type of funding for really good research in agriculture throughout the world. Certainly, I'm hearing that people are keen to invest. Whether they end up investing in the sorts of things we've talked about, the right sorts of things, remains to be seen. But there's a greater appetite for investment in agricultural innovation than I think there's been for some time.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Henry. And may I call on CIRCA Director, our very own Dr. Gregorio? He has a question for you, Dr. Henry. Dr. Glenn?
Yeah, thank you, Robert, for your presentation. And you have shown your publication, how you translate it really for innovation and make it into practical solutions. My question is, what's your idea on the compromise now of the genetic or GMO and organic farming? Because there's two very, both has potential, but I think there's a big divide on both. So what's your idea? How would you be innovative to make this both exist to happen?
Yes, this is certainly a challenge. I think we have to argue that all of these technologies can coexist the extent that they actually work and are sustainable, we should be encouraging them. I think it is unfortunate to some extent that that organic farmers don't use GMOs. There was a time early in the development when we thought the fact that genetic modification would allow the elimination of the use of chemicals, for example, would see them embraced by organic farmers, but that hasn't proved to be the case. What remains to be seen, I think, is how the technology changes, the move away from the classical genetic engineering to gene editing and yet other forms of genetic manipulation. To what extent those will be accepted by organic farmers is still an open question. In some places, people who call themselves organic farmers actually embrace gene editing, for example. And so I think where these different competing ideologies and scientific things sit is yet to be fully resolved. And what I think is clear too is that the technologies will continue to change, so that the arguments will shift. But I'm a great advocate for evidence-based analysis of the science and use of the best and most sustainable technologies in agriculture.
Yeah, my dream really is to see an organically grown GMO. Thank you.
Yes, that would be great, because we'd be moving ahead, because we want the sustainability but we want the technology that does that efficiently.
Okay, Dr. Gregoria. Another question, Dr. Henry. Well, we all know very well that resources for R&D in a country like ours in the Philippines is very limited. And so one question here from our colleague is, where do we focus on when we go into agriculture innovation? Do we focus on organism improvement, or do we focus on improving the production system?
Well, I think my answer is that you do need to focus in a balanced way on those two areas. I think it would be a mistake to make all of your investment in just one of those areas, because both have a large amount to contribute to increasing productivity and sustainability. And if you ignore one, you're probably not going to achieve the same rate of progress than if you're able to make a balanced investment. But one of the strategies that we use, because I think everyone would like a lot more resources than they've got, is to partner and to collaborate in big networks. And in a sense, I don't think agricultural innovation happens even in one country to a great extent anymore. It's very much a global activity. So many of the projects that I'd be involved with would have components of the project going on in 5 or 10 or more countries. And so I think you do need to think about what the needs are without constraint to exactly what part of the research spectrum you're investing, and try and capture that investment from the whole global community in a way that maximizes the rate of progress that you make in what's able to be delivered to the end users.
Okay, let me accommodate our last two questions. One question from our colleague here. In developing countries like the Philippines, Dr. Henry, food security is still the urgent issue. Coupled with climate change vulnerability of our landscape, unique landscape, which is basically an archipelago. Is your research or are your research engagements encompass such kind of context?
Yes, I think we have very, very divergent perspectives on a whole lot of things about the scale of agriculture in different countries. And so we do need to really understand all of those differences. But I do believe that much of the innovation that we need is actually common to the smallholder type farming and also to larger scale, more industrial farming. Clearly, we do need to recognise the differences and what we're delivering for those different sectors, but we also need to recognise that some of the science is actually really the same, that will produce food more efficiently. It just needs to be delivered in a different way. But certainly you have unique challenges in your archipelago, and I can't pretend I understand all of them, but I do recognise they would be quite unique.
Very challenging indeed. Okay, one last question, Dr. Henry, coming from a colleague, maybe not from the technical side. How would a non-technical person be able to contribute to agricultural innovation?
Oh, I think in many ways. I do so agree with the view that a large amount of the innovation that I see is not by the scientists, but by the farmers themselves. And they're not doing it from the point of view of any great understanding of the underlying scientific principles. They're just great innovators, and that's why they're successful farmers quite often. So I think it's important that scientists recognise the contribution of farmers and end users and actually interact with them, listen to them, try and learn something, and try and make sure that the science actually supports the type of innovation that's happening. That's quite independent of the scientific input. So a really important point, I think, for scientists to understand that and engage with it rather than anything else.
Thank you, Dr. Henry. That's why I mentioned I also come from the non-technical side of agriculture, and that is why earlier I mentioned that we take great interest in agriculture innovation simply because we want to see our farmers, other stakeholders, how do they perceive and react and view all of these that we are doing in terms of agriculture innovation. Before I end the question and answer, I don't have a question, Dr. Henry, but I have an ardent request. For information of everybody, the College of Agriculture and Food Science, through the Agricultural Systems Institute, where I come from, has initiated the institution of a proposal, academic program proposal, on a professional master's program in rural and agricultural innovation systems. We have started significant work on this proposal, and this program looks into the social science aspect, Dr. Henry, of agricultural innovation. That is why in this program, we deal with dynamics of rural innovation systems. We talk about the social organization of innovation systems. We talk about social ecosystems and rural and agricultural innovations, mechanisms, and strategies. And so my ardent request, our ardent request, Dr. Henry, is if we could invite you to see or take a look at our proposal, and perhaps you may comment or make suggestions on how we can better improve on our proposal before we distribute to the College of Agriculture faculty and the rest of the faculty of UPLB.
I'd be very happy to contribute anything I could. Very, very happy to do that. Yes, so
thank you very much.
It is a big, we have big social challenges here in agriculture, in that we have aging farmers, and the transition of the farm to the next generation is a really big challenge. So there's so many levels at which I think we have common problems, in fact.
Thank you very much, Dr. Henry. I forgot to mention that one of the crafters of this proposal is a graduate of the University of Queensland from the
Very good.
Department of Anthropology under David Hindman.
Very good.
So again, thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you.
Henry, for your presentation and for accommodating all of those questions. I give you back and the rest of the group to Dr. Banda Magpantay. Banda?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Calalo, for effectively and efficiently facilitating our open forum. Okay, so I hope everyone got their take-home messages on how we can harness agriculture innovation on our road to recovery, not just from the pandemic, but also from other problems faced by the agriculture sector as a whole. So the college would like to award a certificate of appreciation to Dr. Robert Henry. So may I read the citation? The College of Agriculture and Food Science, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, College Laguna, Philippines, presents this certificate of appreciation to Dr. Robert Henry for serving as the resource speaker on the topic, Agriculture Innovations Embracing Impacts of Change in Agriculture and Food Security, during the 112th Foundation Day celebration of the College of Agriculture and Food Science, CAFS, held on the 3rd day of March 2021. Given this 3rd day of March 2021 at the College of Agriculture and Food Science, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, Laguna. Signed, Dr. Elpidio M. Agbisit Jr., Dean, and Dr. Pompe C. Santa Cruz, the Chair of the Webinar Committee. Thank you very much, Dr. Henry.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for gracing our occasion. We hope now that our collaboration will not end here. We hope to foster stronger partnership with you and the University of Queensland.
Thank you.
So on your screen right now are the QR code and the website link, a Google Form link to the webinar's evaluation form. Those who are tuning in via YouTube and Facebook page may access the link from the comments section. So you have approximately 24 hours to accomplish them and claim your personal certificate of attendance. To wrap up this morning's webinar, may I call on Dr. Pompe C. Santa Cruz, Professor at the Institute of Crop Science, CAFS UPLB, and the Chair of the Ad Hoc Committee on CAFS webinar series for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Beniranda. Good morning, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. So, our keynote speaker, Professor Robert Henry, shared us some major considerations for innovations of crop agriculture in response to climate change. So, some of the key strategic options, as you mentioned, is we have to fast track the innovation, and the second one is the talk bank on the crop improvement through breeding and use of molecular tools, as well as also improvement of the product quality of the products. The quality of the products. So again, it could be we have seen the biotech, nanotech, or information technologies are as conduits or means or conduits. But in this case, one of the additional is being a breeder. He also shared us the entry of the precision or smart agriculture. So it means that's the G by E that we have. We improve the G, but we need to modify the E. Even the G is very highly improved already. We still have to modify on the other side. And thank you very much for that, Professor Henry, for a very evidence-filled strategic options you shared us. For sure, we have to tailor that under Philippine setting, and we have to use that. We will use that in our future plannings or strategy in our research development programs. So our Department of Agriculture Secretary Dar also shared us the key strategies and priorities in transforming Philippine agriculture amid environmental and socioeconomic challenges. So we are basically from the talk of our secretary, we are being encouraged as well as challenged to take part or participate and mobilize just to get mainstream with these needed innovations. So the challenge is there already. But on the side of UPLB, our Dean Agdisit and our Chancellor Camacho clearly reiterated, and this was backed up because Sherka is our ally this time. We have Dr. Bling Gregory here, and it was clearly reiterated that CAPS and UPLBs, it was emphasized that the CAPS and or UPLB's resolve or commitment to enhance its role or participation in bringing about the agricultural innovations, which should be tailored within the Philippine setting, as well as it should be calibrated within the carrying capacity of the university, as well as the need of the country, because there are so many institutions also, research institutions that are working on that, but we will surely will do our work. So hence, for this webinar, we have seen the three major ALUP, okay? We have seen the priorities, we have seen the challenges, we have seen the commitment and resolve from the UPLB, and we have seen the strategic option from our keynote speaker, which is surely very important during to be considered during our planning. Thank you very much we would like to thank again our distinguished guest, Professor Henry, Dr. Lynn Gregorio. Even you're one of us, you are wearing a hat of the Sherpa director now. We would like to thank of course, our dean, our chancellor, our dean, and the two associate deans who made this webinar possible. Okay, and also the ground people. We know that because we cannot move without them. So, thank you very much to the participants. Thank you, everybody. And it's really the learning from a wisdom from a great scientist like Dr. Henry, Professor Henry, would mean a lot to us. Okay. Thank you very much, and have a pleasant day ahead of us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Santa Cruz. I agree this has been a very productive discussion. But this is not yet the end of our task. No? The college is given a very big challenge, not just by the department or the secretary of the Department of Agriculture, but the whole nation to lead the country in using innovations. So before we end, let me remind again our participants to fill out the evaluation form so as to get your personalized certificate of attendance. So our program ends here. Thank you for joining us in this almost 2-hour webinar. We hope that you could also join us in our next webinars. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Wag muna. Wait lang. Si-check ko muna si Dr. Henry.
Na daw aalis, Doc Pomps.
Talaga. Nandito
Picture taking ba ulit? Habang may
There will be
lipstick pa.
playing.
Wala na po. Umalis na po si Dr. Henry.
O, edi tayo.
So we will be playing the college hymn and the UP Naming Mahal. Congratulations to the College of Agriculture and Food Science, UPLB, happy 112th founding anniversary.
Thank you, Ma'am Vance.
Thank you po. E-end na po namin yung webinar.